Everyone might have to accept, okay, but otherwise, well,
But
great.
let me go ahead, Matt, and have everybody here introduce ourselves, and then you guys can introduce yourselves, and then we can go ahead and start the discussion. I was really happy this morning, and Janice, I'm really looking forward to getting to meet you. Matt told me that you were able to participate, and I saw you earlier. And thank you for everything that you've done. It's an incredible story that you have. And I'm looking forward to you sharing it with the people of Guam. But right is our Vice Speaker, Tina Munoz Barnes, Vice Speaker.
Half a day and good morning. Thank you for having us this morning.
Charlie, you want to speak first?
Yes, half a day. Good morning. My name is Charlie Mosa. In my before life, I was a captain in the Marine Corps. I was actually under Task Force 58 with General Mattis in our first wave in Afghanistan. So I spent quite some time in Afghanistan, know the people well, and now I'm the general manager for American President Lines, a shipping company that's been doing a lot of business into Afghanistan and also services the U.S. flag into Guam as well.
And if I may, Peter, half a day and good morning to everyone on the Zoom link. Tina Rose Munoz Barnes, Vice Speaker of the 36th Guam Legislature, moreover, Oversight Chair of Committee on Rules and Regional Affairs. To my right is my Communications Director, Sharak Bawani, assigned to work closely with the community stakeholders on this effort, especially working closely with Mr. Scrow. But if I may, I'd like to introduce also a part of our team that is with us this morning. And behind me are some young interns with our Public Policy Institute, and they have joined us. I say that they're the upcoming, the future generation to fill my seat, but more importantly, they do a lot of the hard work also and a lot of the analytical research, and then just working closely with our team. So I'm glad to have them here, and thank you in advance for sharing, having them share their time with us on this meeting this morning. I will also note for the record that we do have media here from Guam, the different media outlets, and I must thank my legislative IT staff for also being a part in setting up this meeting, because we can see you clear now.
Wonderful.
So thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Half a day. My name is Matt Zeller. It's an honor to be meeting you all for the first time. And Peter, I know we've talked a number of occasions, but it's great to finally actually get to speak to each other over a video call like this. Like I said, I'm Matt Zeller. I'm an Afghan war veteran. I'm only alive talking to any of you today because of my brother Janis, who's joined us on this call. We served together in 2008, actually with the Guam National Guard. So big fans of the 368. Colonel Martinez, who I know is on the call, was on our base with us. How you doing, sir? And the long and short of it is we are a coalition of advocates on this call who are desperate to try and get our government to keep a promise that our nation made to people like Janis. There are currently 18,000 applicants for something called the Special Immigration Visa. These are primarily interpreters, but they also include engineers, truck drivers, aid workers, folks who work for the embassy, and their families, their immediate families, who are in danger right now of being killed by the Taliban. And so the coalition that will now introduce themselves, I've been trying very, very hard for the last couple of months, in some cases years, but really in particular the last couple of months, to try to mount an air evacuation of these individuals to your island. And so we're honored that you would even entertain this and think of it, but more how enthusiastically you seem to have embraced the idea and welcomed it. But that's enough for me. Why don't we let the rest of the coalition introduce themselves? Janis, why don't you go next?
All right. My name is Janis Shinwari. I'm the co-founder of No One Left Behind. And I came here to United States almost 80 years ago on a special immigrant visa, SIV. And in Afghanistan, I used to work as an interpreter for almost 8 years. And now we are here to fight for those who helped our mission in Afghanistan and fight for their rights to bring them here to the safety because of their service to the US government their life is in the risk, and we are advocating for them to bring them here to safety.
Thanks, brother. Kim, why don't you go next?
Good morning. I'm Kim Staffieri, founder of the Association of Wartime Allies. Probably about 4 or 5 years ago, I was with Matt one night, and Janice, actually. We were out at dinner. We had just met. And they expressed to me a need of advocacy for individual cases to help SIVs get their visas. And I kind of raised my hand and said, sure, on a Sunday afternoon, I can work on a couple of cases. It turned into something that I could have never imagined. We currently have over 11,000 Afghan SIV applicants in our private Facebook group. We offer them continual support 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We never stop. We teach them how to fill out proper applications, how to confront from the most common problems to very complex problems. We've created a huge network of assistants, legal immigration experts, Department of State people, and we're doing a lot of really good work. I'm very, very happy to speak to all of you today because I can express directly from the people in Afghanistan, the SIVs, the dynamic that they're facing right now has changed drastically in the last few months since the US has announced its withdrawal from the country. And they are desperate for help. The messages we get are horrifying. People are being killed now. It's not going to wait until the NATO and the US troops are gone. It's already happening. And I'm so grateful for all of you to even entertain helping these folks because they really need it. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. Chris, why don't you go next?
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, my name is Chris Purdy. I'm the project manager of Vets for American Ideals at Human Rights First. We are the veterans advocacy arm of Human Rights First, which is a national advocacy organization with a focus on refugee asylum work. We've been working on the special immigrant visa project for over a dozen years since really its inception. We saw this as a real opportunity to help our country close a chapter and like Matt said, keep a promise to those who served us in Afghanistan. I myself am an Iraq vet. I was in Iraq at the end of that campaign and saw the promises go unkept there. And I'm really quite committed, as everyone is here, to make sure that we don't make that same mistake again. On a lighter note, I would also say that Matt, Kim, and I, coincidentally, are all from the same hometown and just happened to get in this work of Rochester, New York. So repping the 585 here. So I'll let you take it away, Matt.
I love it when you bring up our beloved hometown. We'll have to invite all of you to Rochester at some point and introduce you to a place that we all consider to be as close to heaven as one might be able to get. But I haven't seen Guam yet. I hope to at some point. So, Madam Vice Speaker, that is our coalition. We'd love to answer any questions you might have. We stand ready to talk to you about any of the issues that you'd like to address. And we just can't thank you enough for even being willing to entertain this this wild and crazy idea and being so enthusiastic about helping our nation put its best foot forward to the global community and help keep this promise. So thank you.
Thank you so very much, Matt. But before I even ask my first question, I just want to thank Colonel Martinez. I know you introduced him earlier, but really close family friend, close relative, always working closely with our church. And I just want to thank him for being here. I understand he's got some close ties with you guys and being wife of a veteran. I truly understand what we need to do to step up to the plate. And I guess my first question is, how can I help? You know, a little bit about me. Like I said, I am a wife of a veteran, an Air Force veteran, a mother of a veteran, a grandmother-in-law of an active duty soldier. And like I said earlier, I am the Vice Speaker of the Guam Legislature. And so I would assume that all dialogue between the Uncle Sam and government of Guam will be with the governor, but I want to say I am 100% on board to be an advocate and facilitate however I can. So what can I do to help our friends during their time of need? And we can share after others get the chance to speak, how Guam has been able to step up in the past as it relates to former facilitations that were needed, like with the Vietnam refugees, with the Kurdish refugees, and even as recent as the Theodore Roosevelt, the TR that was here, and how our governor stepped up to the plate, working closely with me last term when I was the speaker of the 35th Guam Legislature. So with that being said, that is my first question to you, Matt, and the team. And Kim, I want to say thank you for being the rose on the other side in this Zoom meeting with a lot of fine gentlemen here. And we've got a lot of support with our interns that are with us also.
Well, thank you for the question. I'll ask my team. What do you think would be the best answer? I would just offer up front, we'd actually love to know how we can best help make sure that your interests are represented and taken care of as this is being planned. You know, as advocates, we have a lot of conversations with members of Congress and the administration, and we have been, you know, at the forefront of trying to ensure that, you know, and asking to use your island as a place of refuge, that your people's interests come first in that discussion, because we're asking to, you know, be guests in your home. So that would be my response to you, is if you could help us identify a process that we could ensure is the best way to make sure that the island's needs are considered and addressed as we plan this, I think that would be ideal. But I'd love to know what my teammates think as well.
Yeah, Matt, I could jump in a little bit on this also. So, you know, we have seen, we saw the governor's letter, I believe it was last week, and we've seen other letters from other major organizations, political leaders in Congress sent letters a few weeks ago, and the White House has been silent on this issue. They've not made any public statements on it. We know that elements within the government, specifically the Department of Defense, are very supportive of doing the right thing. And we believe that the White House is making a political calculation here, and seeing what they would view as an immigration issue, which we all know actually is a national security issue. So when we talk about political help that I think we need right now, it is putting as much educating the White House as much as possible on the need for this evacuation, the welcoming spirit of the people of Guam and the willingness to help, and the capacity to actually do that. Because I think some of us think about this as evacuating all of these people very quickly. That seems like it can't be done. You all know better than anybody the time frame of the Kurdish evacuation, I believe, was over a couple days. So that type of historical knowledge is saying, yes, this can be done. We can do it quickly. We want to do it. We have the infrastructure here on Guam to effectuate that. Those are the things the White House needs to know. So when they're trying to turn this political calculation over, that they can get us across the finish line, because the policy is there. The people who want this policy to happen, they're already in our corner in the executive branch. We have Congress on our side for the most part, and I'm confident that once President Biden understands really the need for this and understands the capabilities that can effectuate it, that he'll make the right decision. So,
anyone else?
It's near to impossible for me to speak after Matt and Chris, because they both do it so well. And they both clearly covered any thoughts that I currently have. So I will just send it back over.
Okay. Brother, anything?
No, actually, you guys covered everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if I could just add something where I think it would be very helpful if you guys could help us with this, is as you said, Christopher, we have the historic experience of doing this. I think I know Matt knows this, but I don't think I've shared it with the rest of you, that Guam had hosted and processed about 120,000 Vietnamese refugees. And it just so happens that at that time, there was a 1.5-year-old baby that then became my brother. So we have a very personal experience with respect to our family and what happened during that time period. And the response of Guam at that time, and even with the Kurdish refugees, was just incredible. I'm very proud of our community. I get nervous sometimes thinking about what could happen to these refugees if they instead are placed in places like Kuwait or Qatar or some of these other foreign countries. And Matt, you had explained to me some of the risk of doing some of those things, like, for example, not being covered under the Refugee Convention. Are there any ways, or in your advocacy, are you primarily focusing on Guam because of all of the benefits compared to going to a foreign country as far as processing the SIVs?
Well, I'll speak to it from a military standpoint, because actually Chris is by far the better expert when it comes to the immigration aspects. But from a military standpoint, and this is what I mean by military logistics standpoint, Guam is a single plane flight from Afghanistan. So we don't have to stop anywhere to refuel. And that's actually a really big deal, because if you have a plane full of Afghans and you need to stop anywhere to refuel to go on to a follow-on flight, and it's not US territory, you have to get landing permission from that country to bring those people even onto their airport to refuel. That is in itself a diplomatic hurdle and a headache. The other thing is you talked about is the refugee conventions and how our immigration system works. And so for that, I'm gonna let Chris jump in, because this is really where his area of expertise is.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt. So you're absolutely right. Flying refugees to American territory is the best way to make sure that no one slips through the cracks. So we've called them refugees, and they're actually technically not refugees. These are folks who are covered under what's called the Special Immigrant Visa, which was set up by Congress in 2008 and 2009 for Iraq and Afghanistan, for people like Janice, who served for 2 years of faithful service to the United States government. They were essentially, it's very complicated, but they were essentially given a fast track to legal permanent residency, and then a fast track to citizenship. And that was what was called the Special Immigrant Visa Program, colloquially known as the SIV. So you'll hear people call it, say, CIV, SIV. That's what they're referencing. We want the SIV program has been ladled with bureaucratic problems, with red tape, with mismanagement, with incompetence, frankly, over the past 13 years. There's a variety of reasons for that. One of the reasons is every year, these visas have to be reauthorized by Congress, and they're used as a political football. In order to get the visas we want, certain concessions have to get made. So think of this happening. We've reauthorized the same program 13 times. There are going to be problems. So getting them to Guam or anywhere else really in the United States is going to be the best way to get them started on the SIV program. But there is a rejection rate, right? And the rejection rate, and Kim can talk about why this is, it's not a majority, the vast majority of the time, these are not security rejections. In order to get the SIV, they have to verify employment, for example. And so one of the ways they do that is they reach out to someone who served with the interpreter, and they say, hey, did you serve with so-and-so? Did they complete faithful service? That U.S. employee then says yes, and then it goes on. As we know, this war has been going on for 20 years. And it's very difficult sometimes to find employers or supervisors. And so if they're not able to do that, sometimes those SIVs applications can be rejected. There's a lot more other bureaucratic reasons why that is. They are then given an appeal. The vast majority of times on appeal, if someone who has an SIV is rejected the first time, the vast majority are accepted on appeal. But there is a sliver who would be rejected on appeal, but there still is a legitimate reason why they would need help in the United States. In the United States, we have asylum. So bringing them to Guam would then access them open to asylum. They would be given what's called a credible hearing, credible fear interview, where USCIS would investigate whether they have a credible fear of persecution in Afghanistan. If that is the case, they would then be granted asylum in the United States. If that's not the case, and again, for that, not the case, we're talking a minute amount of people. In the Iraqi instance, this happened in 0.0009% of the evacuees. So we're talking 6 out of 6,700 people. In the Vietnam example, it was less than 1% of the 130,000 people who were brought over who would not have made, who did not qualify for asylum and or refugee status. So those people, we can work out transfers with other governments. We have other mechanisms in place to ensure that they, go to a country and that would accept them. Now, Peter, and I'm sorry, this is very long-winded, very complicated. I'm going to try to do my best to explain it all. But Peter, you brought up other countries like the Gulf states. The Trump administration and some advocates have been suggesting that the Gulf states would be a way to go. And theoretically, that makes sense, right? This is a country in the region. There are U.S. military bases in those places, and theoretically, we could manage that. The problem is, as you mentioned, they are not signatories of the Refugee Convention, and they do not have functioning asylum laws. So what we would have to do, if for those folks who wouldn't qualify for the SIV and would qualify under asylum, we would have to then create another legal mechanism under the refugee laws within the United States to directly help those people. So it would be another bureaucratic loophole that we'd have to go for. We'd have to advocate for Congress. We'd have to get funding for it. We'd have to go through the UNHCR, which manages refugees. So it just becomes much more exponentially complicated the further away we get from the United States. And the final thing is, so that's the legal argument as to why the United States territory is. The moral argument really, and Matt and Colonel Martinez and Janis and all the veterans in the room, they know this. This is our problem. We created this problem, and it's our responsibility to fix it. It's not our responsibility to pawn it off on a third country and to let them deal with it and to let their immigration laws deal with our mistakes. We made a promise to these people, and it's up to us to ensure that our laws and our resources and the rights and protections afforded thereof are given to those in Afghanistan, because I say this all the time. If we don't cash our check right now, if we don't honor this promise, our troops, my friends who are currently serving in Syria around the world, they're going to be in a lot more danger for that. So anyways, that's kind of the HRF's perspective on the whole thing.
Chris, thanks. I don't think anybody could have put it better.
Matt, if I may, Charlie Hermosa is here, and I'm just wanting to share, if he can share some thoughts, especially as a former soldier or Marine.
Hoorah. No, we'd love to hear from the Marines. And
No.
fellow vet.
we keep it very simple. We use very simple words. But it's really when I heard about the initiative, I knew right away that we needed to step up and do something. I think when you look at the allies that we've developed in Afghanistan from the minute that we landed in Afghanistan, we had the full support of being able to establish our presence there. And in October 2001, that was just freshly new out of 9/11, and they were very welcoming as far as getting us up and running. So we definitely we can't. I know it's sort of a cliche, but we can't leave them behind, honestly. When you look at Guam, I honestly wanted to work on the capabilities and kind of touch on a little bit of the infrastructure, because it's a capability because of the fact that we have the infrastructure in place already. So when you look at shipping, when you look at the air, we have all those modes in place today. And we also have the capabilities to adjust to, say, certain food requirements that are needed. We can definitely adjust, culturally as well, to be able to support them in every way that we can. And that's one of the things that needs to be highlighted, because we don't really need to reinvent the wheel. The infrastructure is in place right now to do it now. And I think that's a very important point, because logistics is always sort of, that's, getting them here is one thing, and then taking care of them is another. So logistics always seems to kind of play a key role in making sure that the right decision is made. But in my heart, this is the right thing to do. I think Guam is ready to do whatever we can to support this mission. And I think strategically, it makes sense for this to happen.
I think Colonel Martinez would like to say a few words, and then I have a follow-up question. Colonel Martinez?
Yeah. Thank you, Senator. Can everybody hear me? Okay, again, I'd like to thank everybody for putting this thing together, especially Matt and the Senator's office. Basically, I was stationed with them in Afghanistan in 2008. I was one of the OICs for the forward operating bases. And I did have more than one interpreter. And we do have the teams that are the combat advisors, what we were called back then, who do know their interpreters, and we've since lost track of them, but we do still remember their names. So if you want, I can also
We're losing you, Colonel Mike. We're losing you.
Get some information. Okay, so basically, I'm just here to try to assist in any way I can. Can you hear me? And so I just want to make sure that we give these guys a fair chance to be free of what they're going through right now. Okay, all the terrorists back there in Afghanistan, and basically. I think we owe it to our interpreters. It's coming from myself. I have two interpreters, one Sherman and janis. I still remember their names, but I would like to go ahead, if I may, touch base with them and get back to whoever needs that information. Again, these Afghanistans, they're pretty similar to our culture. They cook the same thing, but they just speak Muslim and we speak Catholic. Okay, so there's a tribe called Hazaris that just look like the people of Guam. Okay, go ahead. Senator, go ahead, Senator.
I thank you very much, Colonel. I do apologize. You were very much muffled here, but I think the intent is for you saying that we owe it to our interpreters to try and see what we can do to bring them in. And in the efforts, I do want to say that we did send a letter to the White House as we have discussed several topics in the past. We've sent in a letter and a request asking to see if we can talk to them and update them with the topics that are happening here, but more importantly, that we want to talk about this issue moving forward. And one of the other questions I had for the whole team here on both sides, for everybody here on the Zoom, is a lot of times when we talk to the federal government or Uncle Sam in general, the first thing they ask us is about managed data. What kind of data do you have? What can we do? And I know, Chris, you expounded on some of the numbers, but I just wanted to see if there's any more that we can look at in as far as managed data that we can compile and bring together so that we can facilitate it when we talk to the White House. And like I said, we've got our Magahaga, the administration of Guam, the governor of Guam, who's literally stepped up to the plate. And in those efforts, I totally agree with her. I think it's important that we even get a seat at the same table. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. Like was said earlier, all we need to do is emulate on the successes of what has been done in the past. We talked about the Vietnam refugees. We talked about the Kurdish refugees. We even talked about what we've done recently with the Theodore Roosevelt and Admiral Manoni, Rear Admiral Manoni, who had a change of command yesterday, talked about the collaboration we did as one team, Guam. And with that, he said, we have a playbook. We didn't have a playbook before as it relates to this global pandemic, but we have a playbook now. And then there was a scare just recently, and they literally jumped on it and worked in it because they now know what to do, especially with this pandemic that's going on. So for me, I think the question I want to ask everybody is, what about managed data? What do we have that we can share at a bigger level so that they can literally take the time to look at this effort? I really want to see how we can move forward. And I think if we have more data or all the data that we can share with them, that they can't turn their backs on us.
Ma'am, I would think for our standpoint, anything that you guys have on your logistics capability would be huge. If there's any, anything you can indicate to the government that you have the bed space for these people, the food feeding capacity. From our side, we've compiled a number of reports that we're happy to pass on to you that have cited the historical examples that you obviously, experienced on the island yourself, but the official government reports after the fact from all of the previous operations that house folks on Guam, post-Vietnam, post the Kurdish operation. In addition, Kim and I authored a report that the Truman National Security Project, along with Vets for American Ideals and the International Refugee Assistance Project, put out that gives a really good overview of the entire special immigration visa program, its functions, things that need to be fixed. But from a data standpoint of what else would be needed, I'd like to ask Chris or Kim and Janice if there's anything else that they'd include.
Sure. Well, I've done a lot of talking, and so I will talk some more and then let Kim and Janice jump in. So when we talk about numbers, I mentioned the 1% or less than 1% of people who we need to figure out what to do with after the fact. And what the numbers that we're looking at right now coming out of Afghanistan are about 17 to 18,000 principal applicants. Each one of those principal applicants is just that. It's a principal applicant, and they have a family typically. The average number of folks who would come within that family are 3.5. I mean, take the 0.5 for what it is. So, we're looking at 70 to 80,000 people in general. Now, that is much larger than the Iraqi situation in 96, but it is also much less than the Vietnamese situation in 75. So, we think it's right in the wheelhouse of the traditional logistics. Like Matt said, we'd love to see, bed space if the Anderson Air Force Base or, other installations on the island or have empty barracks or capacity for temporary housing. We have drafted up a plan that we're preparing to submit to Congress this week. Then they'll make more public. And what that looks like is we would have folks from Afghanistan come to Guam initially for that initial check-in, ensuring that COVID protocols are put in place, ensuring that there's initial security and health checks are done. From there, those folks will then go on to various locations across the country. There might be a residual, well, there would be a residual amount of individuals who would need to stay on the island for further checks. As I mentioned, the SIV process is very complicated and has been, frankly, mismanaged at certain parts. And so not all these applications are in the same place as where we'd like them to be. So the idea then is that those folks who are at the head of the line, who have all their paperwork in place, they come to Guam, they get checked out, they get the green light, then they go on to processing centers in the mainland. And the other 50% or so of those folks would stay. So you wouldn't have all 80,000 people, for example, on Guam at the same time, that this would be very much a steady stream of folks. The average time that a family would stay on would be a matter of weeks. And the longer folks who would stay on for those more additional kind of other stages, excuse me, I'm kind of tripping over my words. The other folks who would stay on for additional visa processing necessities, we think that would happen within 6 months. So, start to finish, this whole operation could potentially be done if we started next week. Wouldn't, but if we start next week, it could be done by New Year's or early next year, all said and done. But really getting back to the need is logistics, bed space, food capacity, things like that. And Kim,
if I had to talk on the top of my head, and as far as bed capacity or room capacity, just for downtown, a hotel row for Guam, we're looking at anywhere almost 10,000, if not over 10,000 beds. That doesn't even include the Anderson installation and Naval Station, the naval base. And maybe Peter or Charlie, if you'd like to add, coming from the private sector or just,
just something I want to add to keep in mind in your discussions, because I'm sure this is going to come up. But with respect to what the Vice Speaker just said, we have a lot of empty hotel rooms at this point. But as I discussed this previously with Matt, that I believe it's a few of the last days of this month, and all of July, and then the first part of August, about 6,000 hotel rooms are already booked by the Department of Defense. Now, that's for exercises that are not considered to be any type of emergency type exercise. So I mean, you're going to know better than I am about how the Defense Department works, but I would assume that it would be very easy if the president was to order an emergency evacuation. It would be very easy to just turn over those Department of Defense contracts they have with the hotels now and have them be for the Afghan refugees. I don't see that as being a problem. I don't see any problem with postponing those exercises if they're not really an emergency type exercise. And from what I understand, the exercises don't involve other countries that's coming up. But I believe those contracts were already in place about 6 months ago. So just be aware of that, because I mean, I for one would prefer to have those contracts roll over.
Yeah, and if I could just address that specifically, we've actually, so depending on the type of troops that and personnel that are being housed in those locations, one of the benefits that we see of effectuating an evacuation right now, and my National Guard friends, I was a National Guard troop, will know, we're getting into prime annual training season, which means that you have a ready force of guardsmen and guardswomen who are ready for their 2 or 3 or 4 weeks of annual training that could then help with the logistics of this stuff. On Guam, I don't know if those DoD personnel who are going to be in those hotels are National Guards folks, or if they are other, active duty troops. Again, depending on the type of active duty troops they are, they could also maybe be retrofitted to help with some of the logistics. But I mean, we see that this is a really, it's a really unique situation on timing for all of those reasons.
Yeah, you talk about. Yes.
Yeah,
Charlie?
no, I would just add one thing that came to mind as well is, if everybody recalls as well, in Brazil, there was a limited amount of space during the Olympics. And what the U.S. Olympic team did was they brought down a cruise ship and they housed themselves and families. And this is a very perfect environment to bring in that sort of infrastructure as well. Again, just kind of thinking outside the box, just kind of seeing the capability. So it can be done. From a shipping perspective, from a food, obviously the world right now is going through a huge shift in supply chain management. I mean, from, widgets to food sources to raw materials. I think it's just a matter of understanding the sourcing of where we need to get if there's specialized foods. But for the most part, I think that level is as well in place to be able to move goods in and out. I mean, primarily importing goods into Guam. That's not going to be an issue. We have the infrastructure to make it happen.
And if we were to continue to think and get creative and think outside of the box, I know that our brothers and sisters of the Marianas, CNMI, Saipan, Rhoda, and Tinian, who have a lot of hotel rooms that have not been utilized because of this global pandemic. I think those folks would be accommodating. We continue to collaborate with them, and as we encompass one blue continent, with us being here in this specific region, I think that we can definitely step up to the plate. And I know that Colonel Martinez wants to say something, so I guess I'll yield to him too.
To save some time, Senator, if I can just read what I just text you, that'd be fine, because I'm always breaking up. So if you can just have somebody there read what I just texted your assistant there, that'd be great. Thank you.
Team, if I can just share Colonel Martinez, he said, I can be a liaison on getting Afghanistan interpreter names from our deployed combat advisors to assist in vouching for these Afghanistan interpreters and their families. Need to be a collaboration between the military on island and the government of Guam. And he also noted these people have similar customs and cook the same foods as we do. Only difference is that they speak the Muslim language and we speak English, and predominantly Catholic. And also We have tents set up on both Anderson Air Force Base and Naval Station. Get the Guam Guard involved as well as during annual training, military collaboration with DECA, and of course, yes, CNMI as well. So those were sentiments coming from retired Colonel Martinez.
If I could just hit on something real quick, the Colonel mentioned something about having well, I think he volunteered to act as liaison, right? And that's something that we're not seeing, frankly, from the White House, because we have these different agencies. We have the NSC, the White House, DOD, Department of Homeland Security, and Department of State. And there is not one convening coordinating official.
Yeah.
And so what we want the White House to do is to create a senior coordinating official or a liaison between all of the entities involved to really kind of take ownership of that.
Yeah. Cover one side if not need be.
I had a quick question for Janice. Janice, this is something I think that would be very helpful for helping us on our end understand the magnitude and urgency of this matter. Of course, it's one thing for us to read a newspaper or to watch a television broadcast, but I understand you're going to be on CNN on Sunday talking about exactly what would have happened to you if you did not make it to the United States. What exactly would happen to these translators if they were not able to get refuge in Guam?
All right, this is a very good question. I was trying to explain this. If I didn't receive my visa, what would happen to me and to my family? Actually, the Taliban will kill me. They would kill me. They would, what they do with us, they will torture us in front of our family. They will kill us in front of our family. And then they will make a video of us, like how they're killing us, and put it on the social media as a warning message to the other interpreters to stop working with the American. And also it is as a warning message to the other countries in the future, if God forbid we put in the fight with another country, that the people will not help us. And but still those brave heroes didn't care about those videos and about those things. They continued to work to support US mission in Afghanistan and Iraq. Especially right now we're talking about Afghanistan. It's already late. Right now, yeah, we covered everything. We talked from the Guam side, from the US side, but let's talk from the Afghanistan side, because we don't have enough time. As you guys say, like, what do you guys come to help? I would say, let's raise our voices, everybody, raise our voices and involve other people to raise their voices to persuade our and convince our president to do something before it's too late. And since the president announced that he is withdrawing his troops from Afghanistan, there is no movement. I didn't see any single Afghan who came through the US, through the SIV visa to United States. I didn't see anyone here in Northern Virginia and DC and Maryland. Yeah, they're dying. There's no question. The Taliban will kill them. And these interpreters, they're the breadwinners for their family. If this guy gets killed by the Taliban, the entire family dies. And let's do something before it's too late. Let's raise our voices and let's have our government to listen to our voices to help those people before they get killed by Taliban.
I mean, you heard it from right there, the expert. You know, by the way, Janis is a citizen now. He got his citizenship in the last year and he voted for the first time in the last election. So that's the other thing that's a part of the SIV program that we should point out, is that it's a pathway to citizenship for everybody in this program. Kim?
I actually wanted to add to what Janice said. Everything you said is very true. It's very real. It's it's happening right now. On June 9th, I woke up to a message from a family in Afghanistan. It was from the cousin of a gentleman who had just been murdered by the Taliban. He had been working with the US government for 17 years. He started in 2004. He was still working with us. And probably, if I had to guess, 6 weeks before he would have had his visa in hand, he was murdered. And everything that Janice said is no exaggeration. And I just wanted to concur and agree and express to you, that we are seeing these things happening right now.
No, it's perfect, Kim, because what you did is you bookended it, right? Janice is what we hope they all have. A life in America, citizenship, future for them and their family. And what Kim and Janice have both now described is the current reality at hand, which is if we don't pull off this evacuation, they're going to die. This is a never again moment in the making. There is no safe haven for these people. A lot of people think, well, maybe the Afghans who don't get out could flee to another neighboring country. Janice, you'll be the first to tell them if you want. I mean, you should tell them about there's fences.
If you want to let me, in 1996, when the Taliban attacked Afghanistan, we were able to fly to Pakistan and Iran. There was no fence. The only thing you could do, you could walk a mountain and you could go to the Pakistan with no visa. You could go to Iran with no visa. But right now since a couple years, there's fences. There's fences and there's Pakistan and Irani armies. And if you pass these fences, they will kill you. They will shoot you right away and they will kill you. There's no more hope for those interpreters to flee to the neighbor countries or to go illegally to Europe. I'm telling you a reason why. Because an interpreter is making $4,000 to $5,000 a year, which about like $500 to $600 a month, which is nothing. And even it's not enough for your family. But if you pay to a smuggler to smuggle you illegally to Europe, you have to pay $20,000 per person. If I'm getting paid $500 a month, how can I pay $20,000 per person to go illegally to Europe or to other countries? I have no choice. For example, if I'm an interpreter, I left behind in Afghanistan, and you're not evacuating me to the United States, you leave me behind, I cannot go to the Pakistan, I cannot go to Iran, I cannot go illegally to other countries. I have to stay. I have to get myself to the Taliban to kill me. I have no choice. And this is what is gonna happen to all those people.
Janice, did you just almost word for word repeated? Matt and I did a podcast interview with an Afghan interpreter last night, and almost word for word, Janice, what you just said is what he said. I can't afford to leave. It costs $20,000 per person to be smuggled out of here. And my only option is to sit here and wait to be murdered by the Taliban. That's exactly what he told us. The very same thing that Janice just said.
Yeah. The podcast, if you want to hear that, it'll be out this Friday. It's Saturday for you guys. It's called Wartime Allies. It's available where all podcasts play. But this gentleman, it's tragic. He seemed almost resigned to his fate. And yet he has a little bit of hope. The hope is that, as we say, when we've been saying now for weeks, we get him to Guam.
Matt, if I may, I see that this is being broadcasted live, and I want to take the time to thank candidate Troy for making a point that we have done this before and done this successfully. But maybe for the listening audience, the concern was the impact to Guam and the safety of our people. And I think, Janice, your people risked their lives to save our sons and daughters. People like my son, people like Charlie here. There seems to be this baseless fear that this will raise crime and concern on Guam, and I do not think so. Maybe some thoughts on that, and I want to make sure that we do this right. I want to make sure we keep the people of Guam safe. I want to make sure we do the morally right thing, because from the way I was raised with my mom and dad, it's the concept of what we would call inafamalik, right? And something that I can explain as inafamalik. Inafa means to make, and malik means good. And for the word inafamalik as a philosophical concept, it is the assumption that there was once a state or condition that somehow altered, perhaps by an act of commission or omission, that must be restored to its original state or condition. I want to share with you that what we've done here on Guam in the past and the successes that we've done, we want to make sure that as recent as the Theodore Roosevelt, right? When they needed a safe harbor to recover from the pandemic, Guam extended a helping hand. We, in that spirit of Inafamalik, and we made good by them. So as we look at as being advocates here and trying to move forward, and we're up against time, is what are the thoughts in as far as providing that safety all the way through for this transition? You know,
So, I'll address I'd like to address how the program functions from a security standpoint, but then I want to ask my brother to talk about from a cultural standpoint of the concept of being a guest and being a good guest in his culture, because I think that'll be really key to assuaging some of your concerns. But from a security standpoint, look, every one of these individuals, you didn't just get to walk up to a U.S. Army base and yell, "Hey, I speak English," and someone threw you a weapon and you went on patrol. You were vetted, you were screened. They were polygraphed as a regular condition of their employment multiple times, over and over and over again. And we trusted them to such an extent that in people like Janice's case, we armed them and asked them to go on patrol alongside our forces. To get one of these visas, ultimately, they have to pass the most arduous security investigation that our immigration system can muster. It requires the unanimous consent of the entire intelligence community to approve the visa. In the 13 years that this program has existed, there has never been a single individual who has ever been arrested, suspected, detained, tried, convicted, etc., of any type of nefarious activity when it comes to terrorism or things like that, who have been welcomed on this visa program. Moreover, I guarantee you, if you look up their crime statistics in the United States, they're probably one of the least likely immigrant groups to commit crime, and most likely one of the immigrant groups to own businesses, to own homes within 5 years of arrival. They are some of the most arduous and industrious individuals you'll ever meet on the planet, and they've had to admit. I mean, these are people who have suffered collapse over and over and over again. My brother is too polite to go through his life story, but from the age of 6 on, they have had to, on at least 4 occasions in his life, flee with nothing but the clothes on their back. They understand how hard it is to rebuild. They're not there to steal from you or to violate your cultures and customs. They're there to be good guests. They're there to simply try to get a new day ahead of them, a fresh chance at life, because there's nothing left for them back in Afghanistan. It's death. But Janice, please, I'd love for you to share the concept of being a good guest in your culture, because I think it's so important.
Right. Okay. Me first, as a Muslim, as an Afghan, explain 2 things. One, if somebody is coming to my home, and my country is the same like my home. If somebody comes to my country, I imagine that he's in my home. If you come to as a guest to my home, I will do whatever to save you, as I did with Matt. When I saved Matt's life, in the next morning, in the chow hall, I was sitting and eating my breakfast. He came to me and he said, first word he said, "Thank you for saving my life." I was, okay, sit here. And he asked me if he can sit and join me on the table. I said, sure. And he asked me why I saved his life, why I put my own life in danger and save his life. And I looked at him, I said, look, my friend or my brother, you are a guest in my country, and you came from 10,000 miles here to fight for my freedom, to fight for my children's future, to bring a peace to my country. And this is at least I could do to save your life, because you are a guest in my home, in my country, and that's why I saved your life. And from that day, we become brothers, good friends. And the other thing about us, if somebody invites us to their home, what we do? First, we realize like we earned their trust. Once we know that we earned somebody's trust, we never want to break this trust. We will keep this trust as long as we are alive. And we will never do something wrong. And a couple of reasons. First, we are born and raised in the war. We are tired of war. We are trying to find a good place, as we are saying like we are trying to find a safe haven for those people. And we don't, God forbidden, I always pray, if something happens to the United States, where we will go. We are tired of like immigrating to the other countries. We are tired of like starting the life from zero. And it happened since I remember, it happened 4 or 5 times that we started our life from zero. My old Afghan people are tired of this. And the other thing, those people who worked for the American, I don't know, for the like I was fighting for a country that I never been there. I didn't know about the culture. I didn't know the people. I didn't know nothing about this country. And same, those 10,000 more people who is fighting still for this country, they still don't have any clue about this country. I'm pretty much sure if they come here, they will be like me. They will support this country. They will work in this country. And because those people are like tired of war. Honestly, since we are here, I haven't heard if any of those SIV did a mistake or made a crime. Nothing. I'm guarantee you guys that you guys will be safe and nothing will happen, and we won't hurt you guys. And if something happens to our country here, we will be the first people on the line to defend this country. I'm promising you.
Janice, thank you for that. And I'm really glad that I asked the question as we continue to hear the stories of you, Janice, and what has happened to those that are in the Zoom here, and even going and sharing, hearing Peter's story about when his adopted brother who came here as an evacuee, as a refugee, and the family was loving enough to take them in after hearing all the stories. We are here. Guam is known for its hospitality and its love as an island people. I shared with you the Inat Pamalik spirit, but more importantly is how do we continue as advocates to tell the story? And brave enough, I have Mr. Troy Torres here from Candid, and I'd like him to ask a couple of questions. I know he has a couple of inquiries, and please, if it's all right with you, Matt and the team, I'd like to see if some of the answers from the media's perspective, and then the concerns that are coming out from some of the audience that's listening in. Maybe you can help guide some.
Sure.
And I was told that, before I have Troy start, Matt, let me share with you that Colonel Martinez says, all true, sad. There is even a tribe that looks like us. Tomorrow's called Heathen,
The Hazara,
the Hazans.
the Hazara,
And-
they're the descendants of the Mongols, the
Yes.
Mongol army. Yeah.
But he says the Hazans, they speak their own language, but cook chicken estofado the same way in the US.
Colonel Martinez's chicken, for the record, was the best meal anybody cooked on the base. Like that stuff, people would come and form a line. People would come from other bases for his.
I miss his food. I hope we come to Guam and
Going to Guam.
He cooks for us.
Thank you.
We're
Thank you,
going.
Colonel, for that. Troy, Matt, if I may, Troy, I give the mic to you.
Thank you, Vice Speaker. Thank you. My name is Troy Torres with Candid News here on Guam. I had a couple of questions, but one was already answered. It was about the brotherhood between Mark and Janice. So thank you for that answer, Janice. The other question is, what are you hearing is happening in Washington, D.C. with this decision by the Biden administration to first evacuate the Afghans and secondly, to temporarily house them in Guam? It's my understanding that there's bipartisan agreement in Congress.
Yep.
That nonprofit groups and consortiums have been advocating for this, and now it's just the executive branch.
Yeah, so there's the, folks on this call and it just represent a tiny tip of the iceberg of people that are fighting for this. There is a massive bipartisan coalition now in Congress in both houses that have sent letters to the president. The House has actually formed a bipartisan working group called the Keeping Our Promises Working Group. I don't know of a bipartisan issue that exists like this in Washington. For example, the letter that came from the Senate had both Senator Ron Johnson and Senator Patrick Leahy on it in support of this. I've looked it up. I can't find any other issue that they agree on in Washington. I just don't know of one. So when you talk about from all ends of the political spectrum, here on the mainland, this is something that Congress wants to happen. In addition, you're right, there's a huge coalition of veterans, human rights organizations, and faith organizations that have sent letters to the White House and to NATO asking for this to occur. And then today, at the Capitol, Congressman Jason Crow of Colorado and Congressman Michael Waltz of Florida had a press conference in which they called on the Biden administration to begin doing this. They said enough is enough. We've not heard anything satisfactory in response from our inquiries to the administration on what's going to happen. It's very clear now that the administration's responses have thus far been, well, the visa program alone is sufficient. It's not. The embassy is closed because of COVID. It's not processing anybody's applications. And with the current extent of the backlog, even if we quadrupled the number of people processing applications and had them working 24/7, it would still take 3 to 4 years to get through it. We just don't have the time to at the current rate of processing at the current speed. We just don't have the time to get people out, right? Sorry, I have a dog. This is the beauty of Zoom, and it's late at night here, and she is not dealing well with the dark. Here's the other the other big thing is today at that press conference, Congressman Waltz said what we've all now come to believe, which is that if we don't do this, the Biden administration is going to have blood on its hands. The blood of the people that we leave behind, right? That'll be on, by the way, all of our hands as Americans, because this is an American promise, but it's his administration and they will have to own this. Congress has made it clear that this evacuation is now non-negotiable. They don't believe the visa program alone is sufficient enough to save these people. Even after we leave, there's some thought, well, maybe the visa program can get people on planes that way for commercial air travel. Let's be clear. The only reason the airports still function in Afghanistan is because our military is there guarding them, along with the Turkish military. The Turkish military asked the Taliban this past week if after we leave, could the Turkish military be allowed to stay to continue to guard the airport so that the embassies in Kabul could stay open? And the Taliban said no. So the Turkish military is going to leave as well. That prompted the Australian government to close their embassy already in Kabul. The United Kingdom, the governments of Norway, Italy, France, and soon to be probably Belgium and Germany, along with, well, Belgium and Germany haven't announced yet, but Australia did. So Australia, France, Norway, Italy, and the UK have all announced that they're evacuating the entirety of their Afghan staff and families, and are urging us to do the same. So the reality is we either get these people out or they're going to die. And so, you know, Congress has now made it abundantly clear that they now understand that that is the reality in the case, and that they're going to be pushing the administration to do something, with that being the agreed upon, you know, the reality that we all now live under. It's Guam or bust.
Is it possible that there are some security concerns and perhaps the administration already is moving in the direction of evacuating them to Guam and they just can't?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think, I think that would probably be how they would do it, right? If I'm going to be honest, is I think in any type of military operation that I've ever been a part of, you know, when you get the warning order, it's usually secret, right? We know the DoD has reported that they have plans drawn up and that they're ready to do this. You know, we're Americans, we keep our word, right? That's what we're all raised to believe. So I got to believe that we're going to do this. And our hope is that the only reason it hasn't been made public is because the order to do it is still secret, because that's part of the plan. That's what keeps us going.
Yeah. And if I could just say also, you know, you mentioned security concerns. You know, we really do think that this is a political decision, that the Biden administration has the policy expertise. They see the numbers that we've seen, that there hasn't been any security concerns, national security concerns of SIVs coming forward, and that this is purely an optical political problem. They don't want to see a large immigration influxes. We've seen them kind of fumble on the southwest border. We've seen them fumble on the refugee numbers over the past year. And so our goal right now is to convince the White House that policy trumps politics, and the policy of this is sound. The numbers are sound, and you know, we need to do whatever we can to get this across the finish line. We have an audience of one in our advocacy, and he sits at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Troy, you have any other questions?
No, they were answered already during the dialogue. Thank you. Yeah.
There's a question from someone on the Zoom chat. I don't know how to pronounce your name. Is it Heidi?
Yes, she's with the Post.
Heidi.
Okay, Heidi. Hi, go ahead.
Half a day, everyone. Nice to hear from you, Mr. Matt and Chris and Kim. I know I've been talking to you like through emails and chats. So my question is, in the 1970s, in the 90s, I know you've researched about this, but how soon before the government of Guam knew about the U.S. plans to evacuate the Vietnamese or the Iraqis?
Well, in Vietnam, they didn't, because there was no plan. I mean, that is such a critical point about this, is everyone thinks that there was a plan in Vietnam. There wasn't. There's an incredible documentary called The Last Days in Vietnam. I urge anyone, you know, that's part of this meeting to watch it. It talks about the last week of the country of South Vietnam and the collapse that occurred as that war ended. And what it becomes apparent right from the get-go is there was no plan to evacuate these people. It occurred because Americans in the moment stood up and did the right thing when it mattered most. The plan was figured out after the fact. So there wasn't a lot of warning given to Guam, if any. Chris, can you speak to Operation Pacific Haven in '96? I know that there was probably some warning given then.
It was a matter of days, frankly. So what happened in the 90s is there was a massive, what we call an outflow of individuals from northern Iraq into Turkey, and it created this massive refugee crisis on the Turkish border. Cabinet officials from then the H.W. Bush administration flew in to get a firsthand view on the ground, and immediately called the White House and said, this is a huge crisis. We have to get this taken care of. Literally within hours and days, flights were taking off from NATO bases in Turkey and landing on Guam. So it can be done very quickly, which is why we are very anxious about our pending withdrawal, but we are confident in the capabilities of our military and our government, frankly, as a whole government approach to this.
Charlie?
And
Charlie had a comment, if I may, then Kim, you can go. Charlie?
Yeah, just real quick, just to kind of touch on the sort of evacuation. I was actually on a conference call early this morning with our office in Dubai. That office handles our operation in Afghanistan. We've been doing Operation Afghanistan with American Press Lines for since the onset. We've been working closely with DoD on the retrograde plan. Obviously, we've already stopped moving containers into Afghanistan. So, we see the severity of where the lines of logistics are getting cut already. The statement that was made by our office was the fact that it was not slowly, but it's becoming the Wild Wild West already. There's huge concerns. I mean, things are getting very, very alarming. And it was very alarming to hear that yesterday, because it was really in a sense of panic, like, things are really getting bad, even with the retrograde, with the vehicles and everything that's going into Kuwait. The plan is moving forward, but boots on the ground on the Afghanistan side, it said that things are getting really, really bad by the second. So I think, as you said, I think that if we need to do something, we need to do something now.
Heidi, did you have any other questions?
yes, I do. Thank you. This question is for the Guam leaders. Vice Speaker Tina Muña Barnes. Do you know, or is there already a working group that the government of Guam formed to focus on this matter?
Heidi, that's exactly what we want at this time. And I know that with the support of the administration and her efforts and her letter writing to the White House and to the president himself, I have here in front of me very concerned stakeholders, and I want to thank Mr. Spro, Mr. Charlie Hermosa, the whole media outlet team that's here, who wanted to be in this meeting, because as advocates and as one who you hear the stories, you share the stories. I was on Australian news the other day talking about what happened to Dr. Nguyen when he first came here as a refugee and what he has given back to the community. And if I'm not mistaken, he was a retired surgeon cell for the National Guard. He has 4 children. They're all doctors. They're all with the armed forces in different areas in the United States. And you know what? We don't forget, as Guam has always been resilient and always coming together in times of need. We know that with this effort, I think it's important that we come together as one team Guam, one team family, and with Peter Scrow literally sharing with us and with Charlie. You heard him say with the communications that he has with his connection and his folks in Afghanistan is, where do we go from here? Because we know that this is real. This is alarming. What can we do as advocates to step up to the plate? And I ask that question again. What can we do? When we talk about getting that support, even as the White House, we've got to.
I know, did we lose them?
I think we might have lost them.
Well, they actually have an IT team. There you go.
Yeah.
Ma'am, I think we lost you there for a moment. So if there was a question, we didn't catch it at the end, ma'am.
I'm just saying, we're here. We're here as advocates like you. Where do we go from here? The support from Guam's administration, from the legislature's perspective, from the community stakeholders, from the business stakeholders. Where do we go from here? We've got the media who can continue to tell the story. What else more can we do from our island of Guam to help push this effort forward? This the alarming information that is being received and the lives of the thousands and thousands of friends who helped us as Americans do their job so that it would be easier for Uncle Sam. We're here to help. And that's why it's crucial. And that's why we want the story to be continued to be told. But what else can we do?
Vice Speaker, if I can
Yes.
if I can add one thing, and if you can answer the Vice Speaker's question. And I correct me if I'm wrong on this, Matt, but I think the thought that I have on this particular point is something that I think Matt and Janice are going to be able to appreciate and respond to. But my feeling is that it seems like everybody is waiting for Guam to get the call. You know, when's the call coming? When's the call coming? I don't think we're going to know when the call's coming. Maybe the call's already been made. And I think that it's going to be people like Charlie and myself, some of us in the private sector that are involved in various businesses that have to ramp up, that are going to know by, for example, hearing from a large Department of Defense logistical company. Who knows, somebody may be calling one of our hotels or calling up somebody right now and saying, hey, what is the process if I want to get 10,000 meals during this time, and this time? Because I can only imagine that I don't think that it's a matter of, it just cannot be laziness on the part of the Biden administration. It's just inhumane to not do anything. I think that there's a lot of security issues that could be involved, not tipping our hats off of when they're going to come over here, because I could just envision some guy running across the runway as a suicide bomber, bombing a plane that's about to leave. I mean, are those things that?
No, that's not possible. That's not possible. I'll make that statement abundantly clear. With the amount of security at the airfields over there, there's no way that a suicide bomber could get near a plane. That's not going to happen.
Do you think, Matt, that we might hear it from the private sector side through some of the things that we had discussed before?
I think you'll be given the if anything, you're going to be given the first notice. I think what you described is exactly right. It'll be calls about setting up meals and trying to secure beds. That will be the only calls made in advance of this. So if you get them, that's a pretty big deal. In terms of responding to the Vice Speaker's question of what can be done, though, I'll let Kim and Chris add to this, but I would just say continue to what you're doing. We love this. From our standpoint, we're so thankful that the island is ready and willing to be once again America's first hosts and welcoming committee for our country, right? The America's Day begins in Guam, and for these Afghans, their American lives are going to begin in Guam. And so we can't thank you enough for your enthusiasm and your support for a plan that we had hoped that you would embrace, but my goodness, have you embraced it in ways that we cannot. Your advocacy has changed the narrative here in Washington. The governor's letter, your delegate joining the House Working Group brings the level of credibility to this that was ultimately necessary for it to come to fruition. And now your continued advocacy is really helping drive to the Biden administration the point that this is supported by a wide spread of the American populace, but most importantly by the people who are going to be impacted by it the most upfront, which is your island and your citizens. So I would say continue to keep please doing what you're doing. Continue to contact the administration and urge them to do this. But Kim, Chris, is there anything else I'm missing?
Sure. I would like to add a couple of things. First, to add on to what Matt just said, I'm always taking notes on something. And while I'm taking notes, I'm always scribbling. And this is the first time in a long time that my page is filled with hearts all over the place. I am encouraged. My heart is full just hearing your willingness to help and your desire to want to do this. So I just want to thank you for that very much. This feeling doesn't happen a lot lately. You ask what you can do. I think as far as talking to your general population, I think it's important that they understand some of the stories of what's happening over there. And Charlie spoke to that too. The urgency, how bad it's getting. I mean, people are dying. They're being slaughtered now. We have an SID who was here in America. The Taliban is so mad at him, they went and burned his house. And he's already here. He's still his property, but they went and burned his house just because. People are terrified. Really bad things are happening. If anyone, I don't want to take up too much time here, but if anyone of any of the media groups would like to reach out to me personally, please do. If you want any more stories of what's happening there and just how badly they need our help and how quickly they need our help. And any other questions? I'm here. And again, I want to thank each and every one of you. This means a lot to me and to all of us on the team. Thank you.
Sorry, last thing, and Peter, I want to, address some of your comments earlier. Like, you're absolutely right to that we should be thinking about the kind of chaotic scenes that are going to happen if we don't do this right. If we don't effectuate an evacuation right, we could risk a lot. We could risk scenes like we saw in Vietnam, people climbing off of roofs onto helicopters at the last moment. So, you hit the nail on the head when we say that we have a real lot to think about in doing this right. The final word I want to say, and Madam Vice Speaker, you as a legislature have tremendous power and a tremendous voice. And we are just three people who share a passion, who work at NGOs. And this is our best idea of how this could work. But using the voice of the legislature, which really represents the people, to demand answers from the White House, because it really at this point is the White House. They are the people that are going to make this call. To use your voices as legislature to say, no, we want answers, we demand answers, we are Americans, we are owed this, and we want to make this happen. And that type of pressure from elected officials around the country, and especially from those who are going to be affected by this evacuation, are going to be what gets this done.
Well, Chris, those are very good thoughts and something that we would continue to advocate for, and even doing it in what we do is through policy, through resolutions, through continued calls, but more importantly, to even talk, you say boots on the ground, we say policy on the ground, pushing it forward. But if I may, I have a bunch of bright interns with me, and I'd just like to turn and ask if any of them have any comments or questions to these advocates that are here. Are you guys okay?
Good.
Okay. Charlie, did you have any closing thoughts?
No, I'm good. I think everything's been said. We stand here to support in however we can.
And on our side, I think the man who continues to make it happen from the community perspective, Peter, do you have any closing thoughts or?
Just want to thank you guys, and I'll continue to be in touch.
Peter, we can't thank you enough. You're a godsend. We sing your praises more times a day than you possibly can imagine. We are just so thrilled to know you, and we all genuinely look forward to meeting you. I know a number of us on this call plan to come to Guam when we make this happen. So
Definitely.
Look forward to that.
Thank you,
Definitely.
heroes. Viva Jesus.
yes,
I
and
think Colonel Martinez, do you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody and you heroes, frontline heroes, and also Viva Jesus coming from the Knights of Columbus.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt. I yield back to you, Matt, and to Kim and then Chris.
You
ma'am,
guys get some sleep now.
we will. We can't thank you enough. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Take care.
Madam
Have a
Oski.
good day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Night.
Bye-bye.